In the aftermath of the death of George Floyd this spring, we saw powerful reminders of just what type of impact that college football players can have not only on their programs, but on the communities surrounding them, and in some cases, entire states. Talking about racism, equality, and justice in college football. I'm pleased to be joined by a terrific panel to approach these topics. My colleague Maria Taylor is with us. Also, Elisha Guidry, a defensive back from UCLA, who's been part of the Pac-12's We Are United movement. The head coach at Maryland, Mike Locksley, who recently founded the National Coalition for Minority Football Coaches. And Dr. Harry Edwards, one of the foremost authorities on sports and race. Maria, we get a chance, and you particularly get a great chance to visit with a lot of players across the country. What type of things do you hear from players that are their concerns about making sure there's equality and justice within the sport and within their programs?
You know, I just spoke with a player maybe a week ago and called kind of out of frustration because he felt as though the wheels of progress were turning very slow on their campus, and there were still so many buildings on campus that were named after slaveholders or people that were promoting segregationists, and he felt as though there was nowhere for him to turn, and he's seen the articles about Kylan Hill. He knows about Chuba Hubbard, but he said also that he doesn't want to be the one that is the face of it. He doesn't want to be the one that takes on that burden. And so I think right now what I'm hearing from students, what I'm hearing from players is the fact that they feel like they are wearing a very heavy burden. Although, you know, they want to play, they don't want to put aside the social justice issues that are still on their campus, and they recognize that they are the most forward-facing individuals on that campus and that their voice can create change. But imagine grappling with that as a 18 through 21-year-old.
Mike, you've started the National Coalition of Minority Football Coaches. I mean, you sent me a release on it shortly after you did it. The numbers for people who aren't familiar, I believe there are still fewer than 15 head football coaches at the FBS level who are minorities. And perhaps as importantly, fewer than 25% of the offensive coordinators, which is where head coaches more often than not come from, are minorities. What was your thought process? What type of impact do you think this can have?
When I look back compared to when I took my first head coaching opportunity in 2009 and saw the progress of, I think at one point we got as close to 17 or 18 head coaches, and now it's back down to 14. And you look at the NFL and how the numbers have continued to drop. I just felt it was a need. I'm at a point in my career where I feel like paying things forward, and then I just used my Rolodex of people that played an important role in helping me rebrand myself to become a head coach again, which is unheard of. And so the coalition was put together to work on the two pieces that you talked about at the beginning: equity and justice.
I think of Tony Elliott at Clemson, co-offensive coordinator, and I mean, imagine a coach who's an offensive coordinator who has been through back-to-back college football playoffs, won a national championship, and hasn't moved on to become a head coach. Now, the jobs could be dropping at his feet, but I guarantee you that if he was a white man, he would have an opportunity that befits his talent and what he's been able to show in the position that he holds. The question is, if you are a Charlie Strong and you lose your job at Texas, can you go and be a defensive coordinator somewhere and resurface at an FBS school like Will Muschamp? These are the systems that are already in place that, you know, you have to create a coalition so that you can make sure that the same opportunities are being granted to coaches of color.
So this comes down to me, Dr. Edwards, in some respects, you have to change the system, you have to organize, but you also have to change hearts, do you not?
We have to begin to understand that this issue of diversity in coaching is not just something that has to do with justice and representation and ethical conduct. There are functional realities that are served by virtue of diversity. One, you change the conversation around the table in terms of the decisions that are made, especially if you're looking at a locker room that's 75 to 80% black. I'm not talking about who's on the roster. I'm talking about who you put on the field. Two, to function more expeditiously, why should black athletes in a locker room believe an almost totally white higher decision-making authority in terms of their safety, their best interest, and so forth on the football field?
Elisha, when you hear Dr. Edwards say that as a player who is still pursuing your career, what's your reaction to it?
I mean, I definitely agree. I feel like just on the staff, having a black coach that you can relate to, you can talk about life with, it's definitely more comfortable because one, they look like you. One, they receive similar treatment to you when they're out on the street. So you know that they've been through the same walks of life that you can go through, and you can talk about history. You can really connect to them.
Maria, if you have a final thought, if you could encapsulate some of the things we've talked about today and what your hopes are for the immediate future of college football, what would it be?
I mean, for me, it's that every player that's like Elijah has an opportunity to look at the sidelines and feel like he's represented, that has an opportunity to look up at his administration and feel like his best interest is really being taken to heart. And I do believe that the only way that that's possible is if the issue is forced of having diversity in college sports. And at the end of the day, everyone will be served. It will be one gigantic circle that will serve itself. Elijah will see representation. He might go and be a coach. He will be the role model and the leader for the next generation. And some of the things that we're seeing happening on campuses will no longer happen because the best interest of the main characters that play in this sport, which are black and brown at the highest level, will be served.